welcome back to another edition of Relatable. New word for me. Relatable, I'm your host, Stephanie Michele. This is the show where we talk about exceptional human encounters, the people who make them happen, and the actions that it takes to create them. Now today I want to invite you to travel the relational friendly skies. Do I not look like I'm channeling my inner vintage air stewardess look? There's a reason for that. We're going to talk a little bit about vintage clothing in a few minutes. But today I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about seduction. Yeah, I said it, seduction. Now the seduction that I'm interested in talking about today is the seduction of convenience. It's not quite as sexy, is it? When you put those two words together. And why I want to talk about this, or just put this out there for you to think about, is, convenience sounds really cool in the moment, and you don't think too much about it. You're like, oh, this is just working for me. It's convenient for me to put stuff in my shopping cart at Amazon and have it arrive the next day. But the true cost of convenience is pretty high. And I'd say there's 4 different areas that we can look at the cost of convenience and say, yeah, maybe we should be paying attention to this more. So the first thing is, if you're not paying for it, somebody definitely else, someone somewhere else is, and they probably can't afford to it. And what I mean by that is most likely very, very cheap labor and people not making an income where they can actually support themselves or support a family. So think about that. If you're doing something for the convenience of you, chances are somebody else is paying for it. And honestly, we're all paying for it. So there's a lot of environmental issues around the seduction and the price of convenience that, we're in order to get things fast to you, we're burning more fuel, or we're using some chemicals that are making products faster, and so you can get it to you. But yet there's a price to that, because the off-flow of those toxins are going into our water system or somewhere else. So we are all paying for it in terms of environmental resources. And I would argue that you are paying for convenience even in the moment that you think you're benefiting from it, but you're paying for it in this one way, that if you're participating in a situation where it's like goods all the time and I want and I'm getting it really fast, it creates a situation where you believe and your system feels like, in order to be happy, I have to have all the time, which is putting you in direct harm in terms of your relationships, and really being able to see the wellness of just being content and happy and appreciating nature and the people are around you. So I would argue that convenience in the moment is actually hurting your mental well-being. And the fourth way that convenience is challenging and probably hurting you and hurting me and hurting everyone is you're going to pay for it later. So all these little coffees and 2 t-shirts for the price of $10, they add up later. That could have been money saved. That could have been money towards retirement. That could have been money towards college tuition. So just think about that. If you're not paying for it in the moment, which I actually think you are, you're definitely paying for it later. So just think about this. And I think when we talk about convenience, it's like food, it's definitely fashion, which is all about what we're going to be talking about today. But it could be even the participation in dating apps, how convenient that is, but what that's doing to your overall well-being. I think we're paying a price for it. And, if you don't like this line of thought, and you want to challenge me on it, I would say, okay, well, if convenience was healthy for us, then why aren't we eating all our meals at 7-Eleven? I don't know. That could be the question for chat today. So if you're watching live via YouTube, think about what are the things that you do out of convenience, and could there potentially be a price that you're paying for right now? What is that price? So talk about that. My guest today knows all too well the price of convenience, especially when it comes to fast fashion. So joining me today is Nicole Robertson. She's the co-founder and CEO of Swap Society, an online clothing swap that gives women equal value for their clothes. Swap Society makes it easy for women to mix up their wardrobes in an economical and sustainable way. Nicole's a passionate environmentalist and sustainable fashion advocate. She also is an accomplished musician. Oh, I get to ask you about that. Retired dancer, and she lives in Los Angeles with her husband and 2 sons. Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. I did some homework last night, and I'm going to tell you about that to prepare for you. But So I just kind of ranted about what's on my mind, so I want to give you a chance. Like, what's pulling your attention right now?
Sure. Well, I think that the subject of convenience is really important. And I think that we're seeing more and more people talk about that. For example, when it comes to single-use disposables, you know, a lot of people have been talking about straws, and there have been straw bans. And I think that, you know, we've become accustomed to just walking into any place and getting something and using it, sometimes maybe not even for a whole minute, and then throwing it in the trash. And that takes a great toll on our planet and our health, individual health. So our landfills are filling up. Recycling is low. People think they throw something in the recycling bin and it's getting recycled, but very little actually gets recycled. And so we're filling up the earth with trash, and we're using a lot of resources to make these disposable items. And you know, so I think that when people think about disposable, they think about that cup they get when they get their coffee, or the plastic bag at the grocery store. But clothing has also become disposable. And so we're seeing a shift in mindset amongst some people. It needs to grow, moving away from that, and moving away from the ultra convenient things, and away from fast food to slow food, and away from fast fashion to slow fashion. And so I think that, you know, we're at a really exciting time in the world where we're stepping back and we're saying, oh, wait a minute, what have we done? What are we doing, and what really matters, and what do we value?
Definitely. I would add fast relating to that too. I think the way that we allow texting and, you know, the DMs of everything to be the normal means of communication, where it's really quick to like rule people out, or like decide, oh, I don't want to have more of a conversation. I think that's part of this mix too. Like, it's not making us, well, fast content. You know, there's a lot of fast food content, really, honestly, when you look at like your stream of just things like, I didn't need to see that today. It just made me feel sick. It's nonsense. It feels like it's taking your time in the moment, but it's also distracting you away from things that are probably more important, you know. So I would add that into the mix too, because I obviously care a lot about that in terms of relating. But tell me, so what is fast fashion? What's the best definition of fast fashion?
So fast fashion is clothing that is made very quickly, very cheaply, but with a huge cost somewhere else. So in order for that shirt to be $5, I mean, a brand new shirt should not be $5, first of all. If you think about how many hands touch a garment, it's an average of 100 hands.
Oh my goodness.
Touch every garment before you get it and you wear it. So how can it be $5 when you think about the materials procured to make it, whether it's growing cotton or synthetics and using oil? We're using resources from the earth to make the textile, to make the fabric. And then
dyes.
The dyeing process, which is very polluting to our waterways. And then it has to be made by someone's hands in factories that are usually very poor conditions, where people usually can't make a living wage, where the conditions are dangerous. I don't know if you heard about what happened 6 years ago in Bangladesh, but the Rana Plaza tragedy.
It's like 8-floor building that
it collapsed, and over 1,000 people died. And that was also the beginning and the inspiration of the beginning of a really important organization called Fashion Revolution that we really support, that's working to make the fashion industry more transparent.
Who started that?
Ursula de Castro and Carrie Summers, and they are two women in the UK, and they saw what happened with the Rana Plaza, and they just thought, this has to stop.
Isn't Colin Firth's wife involved too? I know she
has a company called Ecoage or Ecoage. I don't know how they pronounce it. I follow them, but Livia Firth, she's very active in the sustainable fashion movement. And so, you know, there are just so many problems with the way that we're producing clothing. And, you know, so you can look at, you know, there are certain retailers that are considered fast fashion retailers. Your Forever 21, your Zara, your Mango, H&M, and those sorts of fashion houses or companies. But what they're doing is they're pushing out 52 micro seasons a year.
Yes, see, this is where it gets nuts.
So you used to have, spring, summer, winter,
and maybe that
fall.
that holiday vacation season, right?
Resort.
Resort. There used to be a resort season, right?
But now, these companies have become massive marketing machines that are trying to make people feel perpetually out of style, right? So you bought something yesterday, and by next Tuesday, it's out of style, and it's time for the new. And I think that this all stems from greed. I mean, you can look at companies and say, okay, well, businesses want to be successful and they want to be prosperous, but then greed starts to play a role, right? Where I believe that there's a way for societies to be prosperous, but also take care of their workers.
Human first, yeah. I do too.
I'm a really big believer in social justice, and I don't think that we should trample over other people so that a few people can have wealth.
I know. I 100% agree. I watched the movie The True Cost last night, which was amazing, and I'll be sharing the links with that. That will just be a nice complement to this conversation. Some of what these workers are asking for, so I know in Cambodia, they want $160 US dollars a month. That's what they're asking for just for a nice living wage there, right? $160. Like, come on. Come on. I mean, really, I've paid more for that, for a pair of jeans or something, and that's for them to not have that. And it's like cents on the garment that we would see. So why isn't that happening? It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous that just tiny changes could be more supportive to more people, to those 100 people that touch that garment, and it's not happening.
Absolutely. And there's, you mentioned Cambodia, there's another organization that's really wonderful called Remake, and they make documentaries, short 10-minute long documentaries. One is called Made in Cambodia, and they really show the lives of some of the garment workers there and what their lives are really like. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to see so many people working so hard and struggling so much so that Westerners largely
can have a $10 sheet,
waltz into a store at any moment and get a $5 shirt or a $10 pair of jeans or whatever it is. And what makes it even more mind-blowing is that we are wearing clothes for half as long on average as we used to, and we're buying them more rapidly than ever. And so what's happening is it's created a tremendous waste problem. There's a stat from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that every second a garbage truck size truck full of textiles is either landfilled or incinerated. So we're buying these clothes so quickly, and then maybe we wear them once or twice or never, and then they wind up in a landfill or we burn them. It's
that goes into the air. Yeah.
I mean, we're just and we're burning our money too, right? I mean, we're spending money on these things. We're spending the Earth's resources on these things, and then we're literally lighting them all up in flames. And so we have a massive textile waste problem in the world right now too.
So let's get to the fun stuff. What did you decide to do? No, I know. No, I mean, this is what we do here. I mean, we have to go into some of the problem to really illuminate and highlight the solutions, right? I mean, there's two sides to the coin, and we've got to talk about both. But I know you came up with a solution to this. So talk to me about what is Swap Society.
Sure. So Swap Society is an online clothing swap. And what we do is we have a point system that gives the women that swap with us equal value for the clothing they swap. So we would look at, for example, if you sent in this top that you're wearing, we'd look at the brand, the condition.
This is 10 years old, by the way. I went through my closet and I want to really think about what I'm wearing today, and I'm going to try to wear something that's the oldest thing in my closet.
That's impressive. I mean, a lot of people can't even say that they have something in their closet from 10 years ago.
I had a couple things that I could say. So yeah, I mean, not a lot. I'm not looking for points here because I could use some work in my closet, but I had a couple things that I could say were old. Yeah.
So basically, we would look at the brand, we would look at the condition. Condition is a big one. Is it new with tags? Is it gently used? Does it have a minor imperfection? We only take clothing that's in really good condition, but if a button is missing or there's a tiny snag, I mean, we'll just disclose it. And then we have a fancy computer algorithm that, that generates a value, so that within the ecosystem of our company, people that are swapping with us within the society, you'll get equal value. It's super fair. And that was really important to us because when you're swapping, say at a friend's house or at a swap event, swaps are usually 1-to-1, meaning you bring 10 things, you take 10 things.
Yeah.
But you might bring in something really fancy and walk out with something that's not as fancy, but you love it, but maybe you feel like, oh, but I had invested so much in that garment, or maybe you're more reluctant to swap the nicer things. So we didn't want anyone to have hesitation about that, and so we thought a point system would be a really good way to go. And then also, instead of markups, we just have a small service charge. So basically, even if you're shopping secondhand online, online luxury consignment, the way those companies make money is through markups. And so what we've decided is, instead of there having these large fluctuations based on what brand it was, we're saying, send us everything, we'll give you points, spend your points. We take clothes, all brands, even if somebody cut the tags out. A lot of people do that.
Yeah, because they poke on your neck.
And so then it's just we're looking at the wearability of the garment and trying to keep wearable clothing in circulation longer. Because the more we can do that, the less carbon we're putting into the atmosphere, for example.
Yeah.
The less clothing is going into a landfill. And a lot of people think, oh, well, I donate the things that I'm no longer wearing to the local thrift shop, and so someone else can have it. And that's a great idea, but it's really a bit of a fantasy because less than 20% of what gets donated to thrift shops ever gets resold. There's far more supply than demand. A lot of people don't want to go to the thrift shops. Maybe it seems dirty or gross, or they don't have the time, what have you. So,
do you know the statistics on like taking it to a women's shelter, or not? So it's not so much for thrift shop for resale. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I think that really depends, and there haven't been any more large-scale studies that I'm aware of to statistically look at that. But one thing that we do is we do work with some women's shelters as well. So we make a point of, we don't accept everything that we receive. I think a lot of people don't realize how damaged some of their garments are, or they're not paying attention. And so there are two main ways that we deal with the garments that we don't accept. One is we work with some local fashion designers here in Los Angeles who, if we get a silk blouse that has armpit stains, they'll cut off the armpit stain part, right? And they'll find a way to reuse the rest of that blouse.
That's awesome.
But if we get, a nice warm jacket that has a stain, but not a terrible stain, it's not gross, but it's, we're not going to put it on the side, or a pilly sweater or something like that, then we work with Downtown Women's Center to donate clothing that homeless women in Los Angeles can actually wear. I do know from the relationship that we have with them, they have a shop here in downtown LA.
I know it.
Where they sell gently used garments that get donated to them. But a lot of those garments aren't clothes that the women can actually wear because it's not safe for them to wear a cocktail dress or a mini skirt or something that looks too fancy. And so we make sure that we supply them with clothes that are wearable for those women.
That's great.
But so I think that it depends, right?
So do your homework is probably the best thing we could say.
Which is not convenient sometimes.
Yes, it's not. It's not. But it's a simple question, really. Everybody has time, and I want to say this and be very clear about it. Everybody has time to ask one question. One question. That's all it takes, right? Like, what happens if you have too much stuff? Where does this go?
But then I think that what also is happening is when you start asking these questions or taking a look at the things that you're doing that seem convenient to you personally, but are they really convenient for the world or like the long-term future of our planet? But you start to slow down, and then I think you really start to evaluate everything in your life. I think that it's interesting to see this wave of minimalism, people that are trying to get back to basics and live more simple lives and have less clutter, and
I want to. You saw me breathe, right? I think it's important to say because I've had this conversation a lot, and I can just feel it even in you bringing it up. So I think it's important to say that, okay, when you start to evaluate stuff that's not working, it might feel like, oh my God, it's so overwhelming what's not right in this world. But I also want you to consider that, like, everything has energy, and maybe the way that you were participating in the world, like, you were feeling some negative effects of that participation. And once you start to reveal some of these things, even though it may seem overwhelming at first, it also is an opportunity to go, okay, this is what I can do, and that will feel better, 100% guaranteed. I can tell you that. So I just want people to understand, like, in the moment, it might seem overwhelming and not so great, but get through it. Like anything else, just keep going through it, and then you'll have a different relationship with it, and will feel better.
Absolutely. And I think that, being paralyzed by feeling overwhelmed is an unfortunate thing that happens to a lot of people.
Yes.
And I think, personally, the message that I try to share with people is start somewhere, start with something.
Yeah.
Don't try to take on every single thing that you're doing at once, because I think it can be discouraging. Yeah. Even with the single-use things, if you still buy bottled water, buy a reusable water bottle, get yourself a filter if you don't have one, and start with that one thing.
Keurig cups, that's my thing. And they sell a reusable one that you can put your own coffee in instead of having to buy those like throwable away. Like you could, I know. Like I like strong coffee, so it's not my thing anyways, but like there are things, like there's just little steps, and I 100% agree with you. Just take a little step. Can we talk about some of your little steps? So when you started to really dive into the statistics around fast fashion, what were, before Swap Society, maybe before it was even born, like what steps were you taking with your own wardrobe and to make?
Well, about 9 years ago, I learned about what was really happening with the fashion industry. And I've long considered myself an environmentalist, but I think that as time goes on, I'm trying to live up to my ideals more and more as much as I can. And when I found out, the first thing that I really found out was how polluting the fashion industry was, and I was appalled. It's one of the biggest industrial polluters. It puts so much carbon into the atmosphere.
Some will argue second only after oil, and we talked about this off camera, but because of agriculture that's involved in that, the cotton stuff. Some will argue that it's 2, and some say it's 4. But
but it's big. It's a very big industrial polluter, and so and it also is one of the largest polluters of our waterways. And we need water. Water is life. Like, we cannot live without clean water. And so I looked at my own habits. I for a long time, I've always loved thrifting. I like the thrill of the hunt, finding that cool, unique vintage item that no one else has. So I've long enjoyed that. Yeah. But I was also shopping at regular stores. Yeah. And and I had a mix of high end and low end and thrifted, and for me it was more about fashion and style and having fun with my wardrobe. I love mixing up my wardrobe. But I wasn't really thinking about the impact or the carbon footprint or the water footprint that my clothing had. And when I realized this disconnect between what was really important to me and what I was actually doing, I thought, okay, I really don't want to be a part of this. And so I thought, okay, well, what can I do? And I didn't really have time to sell my clothes online, and I've never liked going to those shops. I don't want to name names because I also respect what they're doing.
I know what
but you go into those stores with your bags of clothes and they hardly take anything. And there's
you go in the huge bag and you come out with $3.
Yeah, and you're like, ew. And then they take maybe a couple of things and they're like, we'll give you 50 cents, and you're just like, but I paid $100.
I like spend more on gas driving over here.
Yeah, and I waited in line, and I always just felt kind of humiliated going into those places, and I never liked the experience, and I thought, oh, there's got to be a better way. And so I actually Googled clothing swap Los Angeles, and I found in my neighborhood, I mean, it was just like the stars were aligning in this moment, that it was in my neighborhood at the time where I lived, a little clothing swap club. And I read their website, and I read their rules and how it works, and I went through my closet and I pulled out all of these, you know, designer items that I just was tired of wearing. And I got a bunch of points and I walked out and I had a whole new wardrobe. And I thought, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And I did that for years, through 2 pregnancies. Over the past 9 years, I have bought very little clothing. So little that if I had to sit down and try to write down all the things that I've bought over the past 9 years, I could do it.
Just probably more are you like counting?
Well, yeah, I definitely buy new underwear.
Obviously.
But I make sure that it's organic and fair trade. So packed apparel is great for socks and underwear. And then if you like the fancier stuff, there are some lingerie brands that are working with recycled fibers and you know, paying their workers fairly and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, those things I definitely buy new. I bought my wedding dress new. I tried to buy it used and I couldn't find something that I really loved, and so I bought something that I intend to wear again. I haven't had the chance yet, but I'm hanging on to it just in case. But it doesn't look like a wedding dress, so it's like I'm waiting for that New Year's Eve ball. I'm waiting for my invitation. Somebody putting on a big New Year's Eve ball. But yeah, so I've hardly bought anything new. So I basically started swapping with this community on the west side of LA, and I was different sizes. I didn't have to buy a whole new wardrobe. All of those sizes on the way to being massively pregnant, and then all of the sizes back, trying to get back to my pre-baby body, you know, which doesn't really happen, but you know, it's a good thing to strive for, I guess, if you're into that. But so I stopped buying new clothes. So what did I do? I stopped buying new clothes. And to a lot of people, I think that might sound shocking, and I definitely think I fall into the fashion addict category. So I by no means am like a preachy, have a capsule wardrobe and own 10 items. And you know, I realize that doesn't work for everyone. But I realized I don't have to buy new clothes to have cool outfits, even if my size is changing. And so that's basically what I did. And it's been 9 years and I haven't suffered at all.
And everything you're wearing today came off Swap Society, right?
Everything but my shoes.
So the she's got a Chanel necklace on, and silk blouse and pants, all from
the jeans are AG, Adriano Goldschmied. This is an Ellen Tracy blouse. Everything came from Swap Society, and you know, I think that, you know, one thing that sometimes happens in sustainable fashion or zero waste lifestyle or any of those things, I think that people can feel judged for their choices, right? And I don't want people to feel judged for what they bought. But now that you're starting to learn about the real toll that your shopping habits have, start making better choices, avoid fast fashion, try to invest in things that you're going to wear for a long time. There's a whole challenge called the 30 Wears Challenge. You know, do you oh, it's on there.
I wanted to talk to you about that.
Sorry.
Just reading my notes. We're just so in sync in here.
You know, will you wear it a lot?
But also just asking yourself, isn't the challenge really asking yourself before you make the purchase, like, do you really see yourself wearing this 30 times? Because if we don't make it over that hump, that's the stuff that sits in the closet that you keep going, oh no, but you go back to your favorites over and over again.
But then there are extenuating circumstances. A wedding or a special event where maybe you don't wear fancy clothes all the time, so you bought that cocktail dress and it's been sitting in your closet. Well, somebody else has another wedding to go to, so swap it or sell it or make sure that someone else, give it to a friend, make sure someone else is going to wear it. Please don't toss it in the trash. But try to make sure it's going to get a new home. And I think that that's, you know, it sounds maybe like a lot, but once you start doing it, it's really quite easy.
I think we started this conversation with it's like taking small steps. Like you don't if it feels overwhelming, you're not that step that you're thinking about taking might be too big for you, and it's totally okay. Take smaller steps. Involve people to kind of keep yourself accountable. Like friends, we love, like, we've all been to a swap party. I met with a friend last week for lunch. She's like, when are you going to do that again? So it's like everybody, we like to do this. Like it's in our ethos to do it, but just take a small step and you'll find that the next one will be a little bit easier, I think.
And that's one of the things for us that was important about bringing Swap Society online, was making it accessible to more people, because if you're in a community or in a neighborhood, you're limited by people's sizes, you're limited by people's style. And so, that was an important piece for us, was how can we have it be vaster? And there are other things online available as well, where you can, do online thrift or consignment resale. So there are so many more options today than when I started going down this path, and so much more awareness, and it's exciting to see. And it's predicted that fast fashion is going to continue to decline, and secondhand fashion will outpace fast fashion within the next decade.
Oh, that's great.
So
that's great.
Good sign.
That's a good sign. And nationwide right now, you're nation.
Yeah, we cover the whole United States.
That's awesome. So yeah, if you're in a place where there's not a lot of resale shops or things, that you have this option to swap.
Exactly.
Go through your clothes and find new stuff. I love it. All right. Is there anything else that you want to say about this? Because we're going to switch gears and do a couple other things together before you.
I would just say that, I feel like clothing is such an accessible way to bring the topic of climate change into people's minds. The science is clear, and the scientists are telling us that we have 12 years to make a shift in how we're living on this planet before we kind of pass this point of no return. And so I would say that, I love having the opportunity to talk about a subject where everybody wears clothes, right? Everyone can relate to these dilemmas of what we wear. And I think that, start with small things, and also vote environmentally. Think about the climate when you're voting, and start to be a part of this shift that's happening in the world.
I can't wait to tell you what I came up for a social challenge. I hope that you're going to like this. That will help.
Great.
Everything that you just said, it will help people stay educated, informed, and
Great.
get excited. So that's coming up. Very cool social challenge, I think. I mean, you could tell me if it's not, but I think it's going to be fun. All right, so couple other things that we get to do together while you're here. We know about what you do and kind of why this was important to you, but we want to learn a little bit more about you. And the best way that I figured out how to do this is we have these relational dice. One has all the senses on it, and the other one's just meant to prompt a question around that we can either ask each other or bring up a memory. Senses, because they're such a part of our memories in terms of how we're relating with each other and the stories that we tell ourselves, the good, the bad, the ugly. So that's what it is. So you ready for this?
Fun, yeah.
So there are no rules to these dice.
Okay.
It's just meant let's talk about this. I'm kind of feeling this. Last week we did a Game of Thrones style relating to wrap up that nonsense. Did you watch it?
I did.
Yeah. Nobody's happy. Dee's laughing. Nobody's happy with how that ended. Okay. So we got body language, and the other dice is 60 seconds. So we could set a timer and do something in association with this. But let's just focus on this one, because sometimes this one, what? I don't know what should we do. So in terms of body language, and we'll try to make it fashion-oriented, is there anything, a question that you want to talk about, a topic that we can bring up? Maybe it's the thing that's coming to mind for me is the body language that you're wearing something that's so highly synthetic, and it's really making you uncomfortable. I remember learning about acetate. I went to school for fashion design, and I loved my textile class. I loved it. It was my favorite class ever. And before that, I remember always, and you don't see a lot of fabrics with acetate in it anymore. Maybe you know why. I don't know why. But I remember having pieces that had acetate in it, and I think I'm allergic to it.
Interesting.
Really uncomfortable. It smells bad. Synthetic fabrics smell bad. They do. When you perspire, they smell terrible.
Well, and a lot of fabrics are coated with chemicals, so it's sometimes not just the fabric itself, but how it's been treated. And even if some chemicals are banned, they still are sometimes used in certain factories, and make their way here. And I've had reactions to things before as well.
Dry cleaning agents. I've picked up a dress. I remember picking up a dress and putting it on I had tried a new dry cleaning, and I put it on, and I literally was like, nope. like took it off. Like I could feel whatever was there, smell, and my eyes started watering. But I could almost feel like I was being scratched or itched, like immediately when I put it on.
Yeah, there's a woman, her name is Taryn, and she started Beyond the Label, which is another really cool organization. And they have a book called How to Shop for Shift, which is kind of a sustainable fashion guide. But she has a lot of allergies. So I've heard her talk about this similar topic where she, even secondhand things, she'll wash them a bunch of times. You know, she's just has to be so careful about what touches her skin.
Yeah.
And I think that the producer from River Blue, the movie, is working on something around this topic now as well. So it's definitely a prevalent issue for a lot of people.
Are there any known cases of chemicals in clothes that are causing cancer?
You know, I don't have that data, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't either.
We know that there are so many harmful chemicals that come into contact with our bodies, whether it's the food we eat or the clothes we wear. But yes, I'm sure there are absolutely carcinogenic chemicals being used to manufacture our clothes. I can't cite something off the top of my head about.
And it's probably hard to find because I'm sure lobbyists bury those kinds of things too. I mean, just to be real, right? I mean, because there's so much money. What is it? It's like $1 trillion business, fast fashion in particular. So if they're out there, it's really easy to see how that stuff could get squashed.
Sure.
Like quickly.
But I want to say something about body language because I think that that's a really good topic for fashion. I think that when people wear clothes that make them feel good about themselves, their body language is more confident. Your posture is better. You're more excited. And I think that, for me, what's happened is I want to also know the story behind my clothes and what I'm wearing, and I want to feel good about what I'm wearing. So I want to know that I'm making a good choice. So secondhand is where I start. But if I were to buy something new at some point, I haven't in so long, but if I were, I would want to know, and this is that fashion revolution question, who made my clothes? I want to know that they were paid fairly and that they were working in safe conditions. I want to know that sustainable materials were used and that the earth wasn't harmed in the manufacture of the garment. And those are the things that make me have that confidence now. Not, it's this designer or that designer or this brand or that brand or what have you, but I want to know.
I love that you're bringing that up. I mean, I do. This goes back to it seems a little painful when you do the research, but once you know and you're making these choices, I think you will sit up a little bit straight, and you're walking around. I love conversational fashion. I love T-shirts and things that get people to talk to each other when they're standing in a coffee shop. So I love Suburban Riot, like brands like that. Even though I know there's challenges, but I love stuff like that gets people talking. But knowing that. Where it came from. You're walking around with a conversation that's worth having.
Absolutely. And, and it's like, I feel excited saying everything I'm wearing is secondhand.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard for a lot of people because I think that for a lot of people, secondhand clothes is associated with poverty or not having enough, and there's this psychological thing that's happened in our culture where we feel like we have to have new all the time, which is really a product of that marketing machine, which we've kind of talked about already. And I think that it's exciting to see more high-profile people talking about how old their clothes are and that it's not the newest and the latest. And Livia Firth did this recently. I mean, she does this a lot, but she was on the red carpet with her husband, and she was like, and this shirt is from 2007, and the shoes are from, and talking about, these are older things, and I'm still wearing them.
Well, the red carpet is a perfect example of recycling because a lot of the couture stuff that people are wearing are borrowed from the designers. They're not new. They're vintage couture, right? I mean, it's a different, but at least it's not everybody's having something made brand new when they go to the red carpet. And there's something else that you said that I wanted to say. Well, so I always thought, when I first started going to resale shops, which I love, there's some great, especially where we live, there's some great ones. I I like, first of all, that it's easier to just kind of see something like that's unique, because when you go to a store and there's like 8 of the same thing lined up, you're like, oh, I'm not too inspired by that. But like you can zero in on things that maybe you wouldn't try, you know, that have a different shape or feel. But there's also something about stuff that ends up in a recycle shop. It's just made better. Like it's lasted. It's already stand the test of like fast fashion time. You know, so they tend to be better goods. You know, designer goods that maybe not all of them, but they had a more ethical process in how things were sourced, because they've already went through the time period where stuff's going to fall apart, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, you know, one of the things that we see with fast fashion is a decline in the quality of the garment. And, you know, people used to buy clothes to last them a really long time. So it needed to be sewn well, and it needed to be carefully made. And now it's about how fast can you make it.
Yeah.
And sweatshops are still in existence. They're very real. You know, modern slavery exists. You know, if you're being paid by the piece, you're going to try to churn it out as fast as possible.
I know I said we were going to talk about other stuff, but I think there's a point that's coming up again that I feel that we have to emphasize it. We've all heard of sweatshops. Okay, that term is not new, or you know, maybe different generations in our family have talked about it. But what's magnified in the situation with fast fashion is what we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, which there are more cycles of fashion. These like 50 to 100. What do they say? 50 to 100 microcycles in fashion, where like it's new. So that's cranking that situation, and putting a lot of stress on that situation in a way that these are not the garment shops and the sweatshops of our grandparents' days or the Depression days. That's very different conditions that are happening in order to keep up with those microcycles, right? I think it's important
I mean, I don't want to discount what people in prior times went through, and actually, I recently saw during Fashion Revolution Week a documentary called Made in LA, which addressed this topic in particular. There are sweatshops in LA still. There are people here that are not being paid the wages that they should be paid, and it's a big problem. But there were some garment workers that had been striking.
We were in walking distance of a couple. I mean, we're on the edge of the Fashion District right now. So to be real about where we are, we probably could walk out and find one.
Yeah, just like throw a rock and hit one.
Yeah.
But some of the garment workers that were featured in this documentary actually traveled around the United States, and they did go to New York, and they visited an old sweatshop, and it was this really intense moment to see these people recognizing that the way that they're working is, there were people that were struggling through conditions like that 100 years ago, you know, and why is this still this way, you know, but it's definitely a great documentary worth checking out also, especially if you live in the LA area. Just to learn more about what's really
So we'll get all of those links and share those in the archive. All right, I'm going to roll this dice one more time and see if there's something else we can talk about. Just general relating, see if we can get a little bit more out of, okay, we got swap button keeps coming up. I think it's just Swap Society.
Funny.
I think it's just coming up. It's all about Swap Society. We'll take a picture after. All right, so we got the sense of smell. So when I ask you to think about like a memory that's tied to like a sense of smell, or how important the sense of smell is, or you could shift this question any way you want to, like we're co-creating here. What do you want to talk about?
I actually have a really intense sense of smell.
I do too. What did you smell when you walked in here today?
You know, I'm a little sinusy, so my sense of smell is a little dampened at the moment. So nothing really struck me when I walked in today. But generally speaking, I can smell things that no one else in my family can smell. For example, I'll walk into a room and I'll be like, oh, I smell mold, or I smell.
We can never hang out together because we will annoy everybody. Because I walked in here today because yesterday the building was closed for Memorial Day, and I noticed my neighbor has moved to a different floor. And as soon as I walked in here, I smelled mothballs and like paint and chemicals. I'm like, so I think someone's painted or did something in the move out. But it was like, whoa. he could barely smell it. You can't smell it.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a thing. I mean, it's super sensitive to I woke up. This is how crazy it. There was a fire a couple years ago after I moved downtown. A fire on the other side of the expressway. I woke up because I could smell the fire.
Wow.
Not hear the sirens. Smell it. It woke me up.
That's intense.
That's intense.
But from a perspective of happy, good smell memories, I would say, growing up, I grew up in Chicago, but most of my family was in Southern California. Yeah. And so I think that I have a lot of senses of smell of the flowers, the Southern California flowers, whether it's the orange blossoms or the what have you, just certain, the smell of Southern California, not the smoggy part, but the wildlife.
I'm the same. I grew up in Michigan, and I think of my sense of memory of smells in Michigan is more food oriented. It's more hearty. You'd think Chicago pizza or whatever. It's more food. And what made me want to move here, and I came to visit a friend, and it was I'm going to move, was just the nature aspects of things blooming and being able to walk through the flower mart and all of that. You
can be outside.
Yeah.
Every day of the year.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think that there's so many great things about the Midwest, but you can't be outside all the time, at least not happily.
Well, it's weird right now. Their weather has been warmer than what we've had in the past few days. Talk about global warming. I mean, things are very shifty. I have family in Texas, Florida, Michigan, and then I'm here, and then my nephew's in Seattle, and so we're constantly checking in, and it's it was 50 degrees here yesterday. It's California. It's almost June. That's not normal.
Right.
And we're just okay. We're excited.
Yeah, climate change is happening.
The signs are everywhere. We're okay. I mean, it's not just about being inconvenient because you got to put a jacket on. There's something. There's something bigger at play, and I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it. All right. Well, now we're gonna switch gears one more time.
Okay.
Actually, two more times. We get to do two more things together. So the thing that I talk about and put a lot of energy towards is just this idea that if we were doing better with each other, that we would be taking care of a lot of these things, more of the things that are concerning us, fast fashion and what it's doing to our environment and just environmental issues in general. So I think we need to be reminded that people make really amazing moments together. And so I talk about exceptional human encounters, those moments that you get goosebumps because you just know you were supposed to hear that, or you just feel love or seen or heard or whatever it is. And I think to be reminded of that helps us go out and take care of some of these things that we need to take care of for our fellow humans. So I have two questions for you. When I say exceptional human encounters, what is your definition of that? How do you define that? And then can you give an example of one that's happened recently in your life?
Sure. I think that when you really connect with someone on a deeper level, that's exceptional. Because I think that so many people are walking around and just thinking about the surface stuff or idle chit chat, but not really getting into the deeper feelings of how people are feeling or what they're experiencing. And I think that the most recent thing that comes to mind for me is we just got back from my son's school's annual camping trip.
Nice.
And he goes to a school where there's a very big emphasis on communication.
Yeah.
And in fact, in order to be a parent at the school, you have to take communication skills workshop.
Oh my gosh.
And you have to connect with other parents and become vulnerable with them and open up to them. And it's this whole experience. And I think that we have a deep connection with the teachers there and the other children, and certainly with our own children and my husband and I with each other, where we're really focused on real connection. And so I think that having kids does that naturally anyway, because you're dealing with these little people that don't always have all of the verbal skills, at least at first, to communicate what's going on. And so you have to really follow body language and sound. And is that a happy cry or a I'm hungry cry or I need to be changed cry or what have you? But I think that we've kind of gone even further down the rabbit hole of this path. And I think it's such a gift that we were able to be out in nature with all of these people who are being really real with each other.
That's awesome. We talked about this when we first talked on the phone. I'm really interested and fascinated about this school. So probably will ask you for a connection to bring them on and have them talk more about what they're doing. But that's the idea that you are in a community raising children and required to go through some learning around communication and relating. Oh my God. It's
all about active listening and really trying to hear other people. And I think that it's made me a better communicator. I mean, I'm a singer and I've performed my whole life and I was a dancer and, I'm used to expressing myself.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to express yourself and it's another thing to really listen to other people as well. So I think that it's been really great for that.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, I definitely want to hear more about that. Okay, so I've been teasing this. I hope that you're going to like this as much as that I do. So I'd like to issue a social challenge of the week every week based on our conversation. And it's really just there's two reasons why I continue to do this. I think that we all need a better relationship with learning, and that flows into other wellness and how we're relating with each other. If you're just open for learning, there is more opportunity to make change and create better connection with each other. So I like the idea of, instead of me telling you what to do and, do it like this, and this is the experience you're going to have, just putting out something that is an opportunity for learning, but it's self-explorative, and you're going to have your own, opportunity to take what you learn from that and do something with it. So that's why I do it. And of course, I love hearing about it when people do them. And I think you'll want to hear about this one if people do it. So this is what I thought. So I thought that if the social challenge of the week is to go into your closet and pick out maybe 5 things. I wouldn't do anything less. If you want to get ambitious, maybe 5 to 10 things that you wear a lot or that represent the stores that you shop in the most, and look at the where it was made label, and then go take it a step further and research that country, and then research that country's garment industry. Just, could be 2 Google searches, just a little information that's going to enter into ether, and then you get to decide what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, that's great. And then I can help make the challenge even easier.
Yes.
Go to fashionrevolution.org.
Okay.
They have what they call the Fashion Transparency Index, where they rate brands and how well they're performing.
Nice.
And so you can use that as a resource.
We are definitely sharing that link.
And then there's also an app called Good on You. And that's a way where if you feel like you're about to buy something and you're wondering how ethical or sustainable a brand is, you can search their database and they can give you what their score is for some of the brands that are out there as well.
That's amazing.
So there are so many tools making this even easier.
I love it. All right, we're going to share all of those links. So 5 things in your closet, do a little research, and now we're going to provide even better tools that make that research easier.
And if I could throw a challenge out to people.
Yes.
There's an organization, and I'll share the link as well, where people can get on board because there's like a manifesto that you can sign. But the challenge is to not buy any new clothes all summer, to make it a slow fashion summer. And we promoted it last year, and we're going to promote it again this year. But what if you tried not to buy anything new? You can buy used things or swap, but nothing new all summer.
I like it. And if this feels like a big challenge for you, because you're a person that's like, yeah, I shop every week, I'm kind of, start with the 1 week. I had to wean myself off Amazon because I felt that was not the relationship I wanted to have with the world. And I, a lot of stuff when I moved into the space in particular, a lot of things that I would find that we would need equipment-wise, whatever. And so I'm not proud of it. There were months where there was a lot of stuff coming in from Amazon.
Yeah.
And so I took it in small bites. I'm like, okay, this week, no purchases. And then when I mastered that week, I was like, okay, let me add another week to it, until I got to a month, till I got to 3 months, till I got to half a year, So we're not quite into summer yet. I don't know what the first day of summer is, but I'm sure it's in.
I think the challenge starts June 21st, which
so you
is
got
the
a little
official
time.
First day. Yeah, so you have some time to do some binge shopping.
A little time. You can join.
Avoid it, but.
You can join Swap Society. You can stop buying new stuff. There's ways to start that process small, but maybe don't go like if you're every time you go out for a weekend, this is a common thing I think too. Every time we go out, special event or like seeing friends, a new outfit for the weekend. Like maybe you stop that, and then it's the next week you stop. You can take it in small steps.
Take baby steps.
Take baby steps. All right. So we have 2 social challenges. I'll put this in the archive. If you take this social challenge, either one of them, let us know. Nicole's handle's on screen. We're going to be sharing all of that. I can't wait. I hope people do this. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. All right. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of our time together.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a conversation that needs to be had. I'm really excited that we can do this right now.
Thank you for having the conversation and sharing it with all of your viewers. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. We're just going to keep doing this for the next 3 minutes. No, I appreciate you more. No. No. So that brings us to another end of Relatable. Like I said, if you take the challenges, please reach out to us. And as always, I just want to leave you with this question. What can you do today to make an exceptional encounter happen? See you next week.